Hi everyone, let's talk about Alubari, A Nice Cup of Tea, which is the second Snowdonia spin-off this year. We had Foothills, the two-player only version. This is more in the normal Snowdonia mold, the worker placement and everything. But yeah, and that's just like, there's been delays and stuff. These have been in development for a long time. Don't be all internet and cynical about it. It's a good thing having loads of extra stuff if you like Snowdonia. But yeah, luckily I do. I have gone on in two different videos, in the original playthrough and the Master Set playthrough, about how much I love Snowdonia. And so, yeah, if you are familiar with it, a lot of stuff will be familiar. You know, the excavation, the laying track, the actions you've got available, the worker placements, and then you go through the actions in order. The contract cards, there's a lot of similarities in it. It started out as an expansion, as a scenario to Snowdonia, of which it has, if you saw the Master Set, of which it has a ton already. But yeah, this kept evolving into something more. And I guess that is just from the kind of interactions I've had online and the messages and speaking to people at GridCon, plug for GridCon there, about this. The kind of number one thing is it different enough to Snowdonia? Could this have just been a scenario pack? I guess it could have been a really big scenario pack with a load of overlays and stuff, but, you know, fundamentally, no. I think that it has got... I'm not sure which question I asked there, whether it knows the right response. I do think that it is different enough from Snowdonia to justify its own thing. So if that's all you came for, thanks for watching. But yeah, it's so yeah, I've talked about, you know, the similarities, differences. It's got, you know, it's instead of this linear events track that, you know, restricts you from having trains at the very start of the game and only risks you having to pay train maintenance just the once, and then, you know, just goes in this loop of the, you know, rival company, or however you want to think of it, completing things for you. It still does that, but now it is in a circle and is just going to keep repeating. And so that changes which things are going to keep reoccurring, and new things that I'll get onto, like tea harvests and crop value and stuff, is included in there now. But also, train maintenance can keep happening to you. And on top of that, you can keep having extra equipment. The equipment, you know, like the trains in Snowdonia, offer you, you know, chances to get extra workers, although you're paying chai instead of coal in this. And they also give you rules that allow you to bend rules, give you discounts for things, give you bonuses when you take certain actions, for example. You can now have as many of those as you want, but know that train maintenance is a recurring thing and is quite expensive and could result in you know, losing all that you have worked so hard to get. So yeah, the events is different. The track is different, I should say, or the events are different. The equipment, you can now have a load of it, and there's 7 of the 8 equipment is in every game. The tea estates are where all of the rubble happens now, so instead of having all of the stations laid out, as you'll have seen in Snowdonia, and rubble cards in between them, you need to clear that rubble to get to the next station. You now have these tea estates that are full of rubble, and the person who clears out the last rubble cube gets ownership of that tea estate. Harvests will occur, you know, sometimes from contract cards, sometimes from the events track, sometimes from the work rates going past a certain stage, from excavation going past a certain stage will trigger a harvest. And every disc that you've got out there is either multiplied by 1 or 2, and you get that many tea leaves. They're worth half a point at the end of the game. They're a new thing that can be given on certain contracts, and they can be converted with an action into chai, and you can earn chai from other ways. It will end up in the stockyard. It can be on equipment that you get. But the biggest thing, the fundamental difference is having this chai on here. Because, you know, like coal, it's the way you get your extra worker, you know, big deal. But it can be used with every action that you take, apart from the one that converts your stuff to convert your tea leaves to chai. Every other action in the game can be boosted by spending a chai. Chai is worth points, and yeah, can be harder to get early on. But it kind of opens up this whole other dimension of thinking. Our first game, the key point that we got out of the end of it was that we had made very bad decisions because we were so used to Snowdonia. We played a 3-player game at GridCon with Chris. Hi, Chris. Thanks for playing with us. All of us in different ways had kind of, we hadn't gone for equipment until about halfway through the game because we were so used to, the event track of Snowdonia giving us permission to get it. And, not thinking in terms of, in Snowdonia, you just have to have one train. And if you want another train, you have to put the other one back. Here, you can just accumulate this equipment and end up with a load of powers at the risk of having to pay a load of train maintenance. And a big thing that we all found is that we were, early on especially, we were often putting emphasis onto, once we'd finally got the trains, putting emphasis on using your chai to get your third worker, because in Snowdonia and in loads of worker placement games, what do you want in worker placement games? More workers to place, of course. In this, though, it's not always the case, and I really like that. It's great that you can boost your workers' actions with a resource, but in being the same resource that you would normally get a third worker for, it changes the dynamic of desperately wanting a train and desperately always wanting that third worker, because you can, if you've planned it right, if you're in the right situation, you can sometimes get a lot more done with fewer workers by spending chai to boost their actions. For example, in a two-player game especially, there's only one lay track space, and the work rate might be rubbish the whole game. It might just be rained out, and you just get work rate of 1. Spending chai lets you put 2 extra track pieces down. If you've planned it out, you've got the chai, you've got the steel bars to do it. That's huge. Just being able to do 3 pieces in one go. Without being boosted by, it's affected by contract cards and stuff after that as well. You've got I believe there were contract cards in Snowdonia. When you excavate, get double the amount of rubble. Well, now you can boost that with a card. You can spend chai to get 3 plus the excavation rate, which the track might be 5, and then you get plus 3 from your chai. You get more from a contract card that you played, and then you double it all from another contract card. You can end up doing huge amounts of rubble, and that is another big difference in the game. That rubble, rather than being this this thing that's all throughout the game, that's even up to the very last station space, there's rubble to be cleared out. There is an overlay card in Snowdonia for once all of the rubble is gone, you put this over and it changes the action. Now that action is useless. And Chris, that we played this, thought this as well, that we've never used that in North Snowdonia. We've never gotten to that point. I think maybe that's partially down to playing 2 players and the game end pretty much always being triggered by either the game itself doing the last track space, or by us using all our ownership markers, which is a special game end just for 2 players, I think. But that's the rubble now is just on these tier states, and with 2 players, you've only got 4 tier states, and that rubble it changes. That you need to clear out rubble early in Snowdonia anyway, but here you're trying to do that as soon as possible, because when the harvest happens, you want as many estates as possible so that you get the most tea leaves. And it being such a limited number, the more that you can get hold of, especially if you're playing you're either playing with a tier estate that's printed on the board, or you're playing with a card that hasn't got that much rubble on it. It's such an incentive to try and get those spaces early that excavation is even more desirable. The station spaces need a lot more rubble. A lot more of the station spaces need rubble, and contract cards are specific to having to build on stations that require rubble. It becomes an even more important thing, I feel. But then once you've cleared all of the rubble out, that will I only played a few games, but I feel like that will always happen. There is such a there's still plenty, but there is such a restricted amount compared to a whole board full of it, that this action overlay will almost certainly go on. And the thing that changes is that all of these actions that require the B phase to be invoked for them to happen, suddenly all of those are useless now. And so that is a massive difference to a load of the contract cards. And based on we cleared out a lot of the rubble in that 3-player game very early, And just the way that they've been shuffled, a majority of the cards that would go off in the B phase hadn't come out yet and were coming out for the rest of the game. And so you weren't thinking in terms of, do I want this action and this scoring opportunity? You had to just forego that action and think, well, that contract card would have been great, but is it worth it now? I don't get this bonus action out of it. Is it worth it just for these points at the end? Contract cards still, as in Snowdonia, still a vital thing in this. But yeah, sorry to bring it up too much, but it is, a spin-off of a game, I think. But yeah, the overall point was, yes, I think it stands alone as its own thing. If you really love Snowdonia, then yeah, I think it's pretty much guaranteed. Did you like scenarios for Snowdonia? Would you like those scenarios to be bigger and change the basic gameplay more? Then yeah, Alubari is definitely worth a look. And you can do that with the playthrough that I did. Should give you a good idea of whether or not you'd be interested in it. Complaints? I don't know. Did you like Snowdonia? If you didn't, then yeah, if you are already cynical and down on it, and you can't be convinced that it shouldn't have been an expansion, I'm not going to change your mind, am I? You've already made up your mind. I'm just predicting internet things. But yeah, you kind of think overall, if you had seen my opinions of the original game, you knew I was going to like this. I loved Foothills, and yeah, if you want something that does something very different while keeping the laying track and the clearing rubble, but doing the action selection in a different way and being an incredibly good head-to-head two-player game, then Foothills is worth a look there. Did a playthrough for that as well, so you can check out that on the channel. But yeah, I'm gonna stop talking. I don't have to say bad things in every video. I love this, so yeah, I am just gonna go with that. Alubari, absolutely fantastic. Definitely stands alone. And yeah, the only it's not even a negative. It's just kind of a programming thing. We need to get the Snowdonia, the tropes, the comfortable things, are sofa seat impressions. We need to get those out of the way and stop playing it so much like it is Snowdonia, because there are those key differences that you need to take into account. And yeah, taking those opportunities that you're now afforded, early equipment and things like that, radically change the game. Anyway, that's Alubari. I'm going to talk about another game now, and another game, and another game forever and ever and ever. Bye, everyone.